Hello everybody, and welcome this week to Talking Flutes Extra, with me, the old flute geezer, Paul Wright. A big shout out to our wonderful podcast sponsors who have been with us throughout these 325 podcasts, which, looking back on it, must be knocking nearly 8 years on a weekly basis. Gosh. You can show them some flute love by visiting them on socials at TJ Flutes or on the web at tjflutes.com. Now, following quite a few of your questions that have been coming in, I'd like to explore this week a critical component of your flute that can truly unlock your performance potential. Yes, you've guessed it, it's the head joint. So whether you're just starting out, in the process of refining your technique, or a seasoned professional, and I won't have to tell you any of this, the head joint of your flute plays an enormous role in your sound. I mean, while we often focus on our embouchure, our posture and our technique, it's the design of the head joint, especially the cut of the embouchure hole, that allows you to fully express your musicality and control your sound. So in this episode, I am going to try and take you through the essentials of head joint design and cut, and also delve into the fascinating evolution of head joints, from Baroque flutes to the work of modern head joint makers, from Louis Lott, Bonville, Albert Cooper to the modern day. By the end, hopefully, you'll have a deeper understanding of how this overlooked part of the flute can make or break your performance. So let's begin by understanding the head joint's fundamental role, shall we? The head joint is the flute's voice box. It's where your breath, your most personal contribution to the instrument, transforms into sound. The design of the head joint, and in particular the embouchure hole and lip plate, directly impacts your tone quality, your articulation and your projection. I mean, why does this matter so much? Well, it's simple. The head joint, therefore, is your direct link to the flute sound. No matter how good the body of the flute is, or how flawless your technique might be, the head joint is what actually initiates the sound. It controls how your air enters the instrument, how it's shaped and focused, and how that energy translates into vibrations that travel through the body of the flute. It's the embouchure hole where the magic happens. Here, your airstream is split and directed into the body of the flute. The design of the embouchure hole, the shape, the size and cut, therefore affects everything from how easily you can produce sound to the richness and depth of your tone. Tiny adjustments in the embouchure hole's design can therefore make an enormous difference. So when we talk about the cut of a head joint, we're referring to the exact shape and dimensions of the embouchure hole and the lip plate surrounding it. It's this cut which determines how efficiently your breath is transformed into sound and how that sound is projected. There are numerous variables at play here: the sharpness of the edges, the height and shape of the riser or chimney, and the overall size and dimensions of the embouchure hole. So, for example, a sharper edge on the embouchure hole front will create a more focused, bright, and, I suppose, penetrating sound. This type of cut is often favoured by players in large ensembles or orchestras where projection is the key. However, a sharper edge can also require more precise control of your airstream and embouchure, and may take a little longer to get used to. In contrast, a softer or rounded cut offers a warmer, more flexible tone, which many soloists actually find more desirable. You see, the air is more evenly distributed across the edge of the embouchure hole, allowing for greater subtlety in dynamic and colour. But, and there's always a but, isn't there, it often requires more breath control and finesse from the player to really get the most out of it. We also need to consider here the size and shape of the embouchure hole itself. A more rectangular hole often lends itself to a focused, clear sound that's easier to articulate. But on the other hand, a more rounded or oval hole can produce a darker, a richer tone with more complexity, though it may feel more resistant or demanding in terms of, I suppose, embouchure flexibility. Moving on to the riser, or the chimney, this is the part that elevates the lip plate above the body tube of the head joint. So you have the head joint tube, and you have the lip plate, and you have this small piece, this small tube. Some call it chimney, others call it risers. And one is usually soldered onto the main body tube and onto the lip plate. Sometimes you can get one piece, lip plate and riser, that is then soldered onto the head joint tube. But for this example in this podcast, let's have it as a separate little piece of metal that is soldered onto the head joint tube and onto the lip plate. A higher riser can make it easier to produce a strong projecting sound, while a lower riser typically encourages a more, I suppose, intimate, nuanced sound. The height and design of the riser also impacts how quickly the flute responds to your airstream. The lip plate, while not as talked about as the embouchure hole itself, also plays a crucial role in the comfort and direction of your airstream. The curvature and dimensions of the lip plate can make the head joint feel more or less comfortable for different players, and its subtlety guides the air in a way that influences tonal colour and, flexibility. So you're beginning to see the dynamics involved in just this little lip plate and little riser that is actually sitting on top of the head joint tube. Taking that as the starting point, let's take a quick journey through the history of the head joint design, looking how embouchure hole cuts have evolved from Baroque times to modern day makers. In the Baroque era, with head joints featuring smaller, more rounded embouchure holes, these designs were perfect for the Baroque style, where the tone was softer, more intimate, and naturally limited in dynamic range compared to modern flutes that we know today. Flutes from this era produced a warm, mellow sound, and the embouchure hole was often designed to blend seamlessly with the wooden tube, creating a very organic, earthy sound that worked beautifully in a small chamber setting or solo performances. This design, however, limited the instrument's ability to project in larger spaces or ensembles with louder instruments around it. So as musical styles and performance demands evolved, so did the design of the head joint. So if we make a big leap forward to the mid-19th century, we see the rise of flute makers like Louis Lot, whose innovations in flute design would become iconic. Lot's head joints had larger, more rectangular embouchure holes compared to their Baroque predecessors. This allowed for more projection and a much brighter sound, which suited the demands of orchestral playing in the larger concert halls of the time. Lot's design was influenced by the need for more dynamic range and tonal brilliance, giving flute players the ability to cut through the increasing volume of the modern-day ensembles of the time. The Lot embouchure cut is famous for its clarity, its responsiveness, and powerful projection. Many modern head joint makers still draw inspiration from Louis Lot's design principles, particularly for players who need that extra power and focus in their sound. Georges Barrère and his influence on American flute design, particularly through the work of Bonneville, produced head joints that continued to build on the Lot model, but incorporated more roundness in the embouchure hole. This gave players the ability to produce a broader, more flexible sound. Bonneville's flutes allowed for greater control over tonal colour and dynamic range, providing a sound that was both rich and expansive, yet while maintaining the projection needed for orchestral work. This period also saw a focus on improving articulation and ease of response, with subtle refinements to the riser and the lip plate. And if we quickly fast forward to the late 20th century, we arrive at the work of the great Albert Cooper, one of the most influential figures in modern flute making. Albert Cooper revolutionised the head joint by experimenting with new shapes for the embouchure hole and riser. He developed a more rectangular shape, but with rounded edges, which gave players the best of both worlds, the power and clarity of a rectangular cut, combined with the tonal flexibility of a more rounded hole. Cooper's head joints are known for their balance of brightness and warmth, allowing for a wide range of tonal possibilities while maintaining a responsive, easy-blowing quality. Today, many modern head joint makers continue to build on these historical designs, offering flute players a wide variety of cuts that cater to different playing styles and performance environments. If you've ever been to a flute convention, you will be absolutely shocked when you try different head joint designs on how each of them will sound different. Even if they're made of the same material, the cut and the lip plate, every ingredient is there to give you a completely separate and unique feel and sound. Moving on, material matters. Of course, the head joint isn't just about shape. It's about the material it's made from. Silver is by far the most popular material, offering a bright, brilliant tone with a fast response. It's versatile and works well for players in a variety of settings, from solo work to orchestral playing. Solid silver head joints offer a great richness of depth and sound. Solid silver head joints in, for example, 925, 958, 997, 998, etc. offer a great richness and depth of sound compared to silver-plated options. Gold head joints, by contrast, produce a warmer, rounder tone. They have a bit more resistance than silver, which many players find gives them more control over dynamics and tonal shading. Gold can be especially appealing for soloists or players looking for a more complex sound. So gold and silver, each one of those breakdowns in different metallic compounds, will give you a different sound, a different feeling when you play it. And then there's platinum, which is even denser than gold and offers an incredibly dark, powerful sound. My co-presenter Claire, she has a platinum Miyazawa flute with 14K mechanism, absolutely stunning instrument. And while platinum head joints are rare and expensive, they do provide a unique tonal quality that many professionals value for its strength and projection. Now, we all think of platinum as being this huge, great monster of an instrument that can blow away anything in the orchestra. You know, in its way, it has this ability to project, but to the extreme, it can be playing beautifully quiet. It has this ability where the overtones all mesh into one, and there's something quite special about the response that platinum gives. And of course, let's not forget wooden head joints. While less common in modern day playing, and it's slightly becoming more popular nowadays, wooden head joints offer a warm, organic tone that's perfect for period instruments or players looking for a more natural sound. So now that we've very, very briefly touched on the history, a bit of science and materials of head joint design, how do you choose the right head joint for you? The answer, of course, is deeply personal. It depends on your playing style and your performance environment and your own tonal goals. A player who needs to project in a large concert hall might choose a sharper embouchure cut with a higher riser, while someone focused on solo work might prefer a softer cut that allows for greater flexibility and nuance. The best way to find the right head joint is to experiment. Visit a specialist flute store. Try different cuts, different shapes, different materials, and pay attention to how each one affects your tone, your control, your comfort, and how you feel. Remember, the head joint is the key to unlocking your tonal potential. Don't be afraid to invest time and energy into finding the one that truly lets your musical voice shine through. And yes, I hear you say, if the head joint is such a crucial part of the instrument, when it comes to upgrade time, and I mean by upgrade time, when you're not totally happy with your instrument in that it's not giving you what you want, you feel it's lacking in certain areas, should you just go away and invest in a good head joint? Well, the answer to that is there isn't a right answer. I play on a different head joint to my flute, and I play on a very old Lafan head joint. And those two that came together, just such a beautiful marriage of sound. But I found that Lafan many years ago, 35, probably 40 years ago. No, 35 years ago now, and loved it. And it's gone through different flute bodies with me. But sometimes you can try a completely new flute and the magic happens there as a whole. If it doesn't, and you like the feel and the weight and the balance of a flute body of a certain brand, and you found this head joint that really does do something, ask your flute store to put it on that flute and let you test it. Because the head joint has to want to be with the body. It doesn't always mean that if you have this beautiful head joint that the sound will be as beautiful as you imagined, because there has to be this marriage between these three pieces, the head joint, the body of the flute and the foot joint. So try it, and sometimes your current flute may not necessarily need upgrading. It might just be that the engine room of your instrument is the problem, in which case go on a head joint testing journey. Use the money that you may have invested in a completely new flute and look at investing it in a head joint. And does it have to be a brand new handmade head joint? Absolutely not. There are some brilliant deals out there. There are some brilliant old head joint makers that have made handmade head joints out of all sorts of metals. And you'll be surprised, the more you start investigating into head joints, how all of a sudden your musical world and your tonal prism explodes. That brings with it, obviously, what is the best for me, because the more you test, the more you tend to become more confused. And that's why I say trust your gut. Trust something in you, something that when you play it, you think, whoa, there's something here. Don't worry on what other people are playing. More importantly, trust what you're playing. So in conclusion, because I've been yakking too long on this podcast, the head joint design is far more than just a component of your flute. It's the gateway to your sound. From the Baroque era's wooden designs to Louis Lott's revolutionary rectangular cuts, to the modern innovations of Albert Cooper, the head joint has always been at the heart of flute performance. Go to any flute convention or go to any specialist flute store. If you ask to see their head joint selection, it will blow you away. They probably have got more head joints in their stock than they do flutes. By understanding the importance of head joint design and its cut, and by exploring the different materials and styles available, you can find a head joint that truly unlocks your own personal tonal magic. So thank you for joining me today on Talking Flutes. I hope this episode has helped you understand just a little bit how vital your head joint is in shaping your sound. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me through our website or social media channels at Talking Flutes, or you can email us at flutepodcasts@gmail.com. Until next time, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and most importantly, may your high F sharp, that's F3, be particularly easy on a pianissimo, because mine never is. Goodbye. Talking Flutes and Talking Flutes Extra are podcast productions by the Trevor James Flute Company. For more information, visit trevorjamesflutes.com.